Yeah, if you can give me the email address, let me share the slide with you there. And then you can help me put it up.
Okay, 1 minute.
Do we have someone from the media team, please? Can we have someone from the media team, please?
Yeah, I think they are working on that. Yeah, they are working on that. They will send it. They're working on that.
All right.
They just dropped it. Please, can you please drop it there? Okay, please check the chat box.
Yeah, I am in the chat box.
Okay.
Oh, no, actually, I need an email address that I can share the slide deck with. If you can give me your email, I'll just share this.
Let me just.
Sorry, but I could barely hear it. Is it the same with everyone?
If you're joining the section, kindly turn.
Okay,
kindly mute your.
email
Kindly
the
mute.
sense. Kindly check. Kindly share the email with the email.
Yeah, I've gotten it. Share with James, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've shared it with you as well. Just help me do the projection.
Okay. Okay. I think we have an issue. Can you help us send it to this mail? Okay, I think this is the mail they wanted you to use. Help us share it with this mail.
All right, I'll do that now. It's done.
Okay.
Apologies, everyone, for the delay.
Okay. It's coming up.
Please, can the admin mute all so that others can be able to learn from what the speaker is saying? Because this person that is disturbing the background is not allowing things to go well. So please,
Okay.
admin, kindly mute every participant except the speaker, please.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Can you put it in full screen mode on your end so that everyone can see it?
The full screen mode.
So just go to view and then full screen at the bottom of that menu. All right, thanks a lot. Yep, we're here. So I kind of titled this Building Technology Innovations and Ideas. It's going to be a very light talk, and hopefully it's beneficial. It will also be short. We'll keep it brief so that people can go catch up with the AFCON games that are going on. I'm sure everybody wants to gain from both worlds. So yeah, today is the first day. You're all welcome. Can you give me the next slide, please? All right. I want to start with an icebreaker to share some interesting facts about technology innovations. Some of you may already know them, and then there are some that you may not already know. So next slide. And just a caveat that these facts are not they are not my own discovery. They are facts that are out there that any one of you can actually like find for yourself. But I kind of thought they were interesting, and maybe you can start to inform the way and manner in which some of us are beginning to think about our own personal technological innovations. And I also selected these because I think it gives a sense of grounding on how things progress over time, and that you might need to cut yourself some slack at certain points in time to view the kind of progress that you need to see your own technological innovation come to stay. And again, this session is also like being presented under the assumption that everyone who is on the call is interested in being a technology innovator. So that's the assumption I'm using for this, right? And I hope that's not too far from the truth. Okay, so the first fact here says that the first computer mouse was not called a mouse. I mean, when I saw it, I was also like amused. It was called an XY position indicator for display systems. And of course, the XY referring to the axis that you have on your graphs. And yeah, basically that. Then Apple, the guys who make your iPhones and Mac, once tried their hands on clothing business. They wanted to sell apparels. Interesting. So your effort in different endeavors doesn't necessarily mean that you will not succeed in technology. So because you have tried other businesses before or other innovations before that are not necessarily technology driven, doesn't mean that you've made a big mistake or an error in your own journey. I'm not going to go through all. I'm hoping that you're also reading them for yourself. Yeah, the other one that I found interesting that I'd like to also mention very quickly is it took the radio 38 years to reach 50 million audiences. 38 years before radio could say, I have reached 50 million audiences. And my question to you that you don't necessarily need to answer is how long did it take Facebook and how long did it take TikTok to do same? All right, the last one that I'll quickly read out is, who knows? I mean, I'm sure everyone knows what's QWERTY, right? QWERTY. The QWERTY keyboard was designed to slow you down. So prior to when the QWERTY was designed, keyboards were presented in alphabetical order. So going from A. And because people ended up typing so fast, and this was in the typewriter, right? The machine would jam because of the typing speed. So the concept of the QWERTY was introduced to slow typists down so that you can type a little bit slower and afford the jamming of the machine. But apparently, QWERTY has stuck around to today. We now see that as the default layout for our keyboards. All right, I hope you got a chance to read the other interesting facts that I have out there. We're going to do a quick exercise. We're not going to spend a lot of time doing it. Please take us to the next slide, please. All right. We will quickly take a pause of, this is fine. We'll take a pause of everyone that is in the room. I'm going to put 3 different links in the chat box. When I drop the link, kindly go to the link. It's on a platform called Mentimeter, and fill in your response to the questions. So I'll put one link, I'll pause and wait for you to navigate there, respond, and then I'll put the second link so that we have a bit of sequencing. And the idea here is that I want us to be able to gauge who is in the room, both for whilst the presentation is going on and beyond this point. The 3 questions I want us to give our responses to is, what's the one word that describes the problem your technology, innovation, and idea will solve? What's the one word that describes the problem that your technology, innovation, and idea will solve? Again, like I said, this is really prepared with the assumption that everyone who is on the call today is a technology innovator, right? Or at least you aspire to be one. All right, so the link is in the chat. You can fill in your responses. Let's take a minute and do that.
Okay, let's be fast and we'll work on that.
Remember, you just need one word, right? That describes what your innovation is, or what you desire as an innovation, the innovation you're looking towards. So what's the one word that describes the problem your technology, innovation, and idea will solve? Right, we would move to the second one. Which one word describes the change your community or the world will experience because of your technology innovation? The link is now in the chat. Which one word describes the change your community or the world will experience because of your technological innovation and idea? What's that one word? Let's take a minute. That question is basically asking you how you want to change the world. If you had to put it in one word, what would you say? And the final one. Sorry, we're moving a bit quickly, just in the interest of time. Today, we've put innovation and ideas together but ideas are not innovations, right? Ideas are often the starting point for what becomes an innovation. But by themselves, they do not constitute an innovation. It is when you then implement an idea that it becomes an innovation. So Does it mean that you shouldn't have ideas or treasure them? Of course, ideas are important. It's the beginning of your innovation. But Mary Kay Ash said something, and I'll quote, and I'm sure you all must have heard this at one point or the other in your life. Ideas are a dime a dozen, but people who implement them are priceless. Ideas are a dime a dozen. That means um, there's going to be excess amount of ideas. There is not just there's going to be. There is excess amount of ideas in the world. Ideation does not cease. And so what you should of what I mean, I find this, right? People oftentimes focus on protecting their ideas. Whilst you should do that, just be aware that it's not it, the priceless nature of your idea is not because you can think about it. It is because you can bring it to life that makes it priceless. And keeping them to yourself is one of the ways to make sure that your ideas do not come to life. And if you understand the ubiquitous nature of ideas, like the excessive nature, the way in which ideas are in surplus, right? I mean, again, understand that these are context leading comments that I'm making, because there are places you might go to and you might not find an abundance of ideas. But the fact remains that for those contexts, what you might not be finding is what you would tag innovative ideas by your own standards, or technological ideas by your own standards. But as long as humans exist, they would always be idea filled. So ideas are in abundance. It's just that the quality of the idea might be different from level to level. So the quality of ideas that you might seek, or that might excite you, or that would be interesting to you, might not be uniform across board. So as you move from cadre to cadre, community to community, interaction to interaction, you would continue to encounter different qualities of ideas. But the fact, the underlying principle is that ideas are in surplus in the world. Your job is not to protect your idea. Your job is to bring your idea to life, and that is when it becomes an innovation. So basically, innovation is the practical implementation of ideas that results in the introduction of new goods or services, or improvements in offerings of goods or services. Again, remember, the focus is to replace, improve, or implement. And it's not in protecting your ideas, but in getting them out there in the world. Next slide. All right. I contemplated a little bit as to whether I wanted to include this specific set of slides, but I felt that they were necessary. Yeah, speaking to the human drivers, like the elements in our humanity that sort of trigger innovation, right? Not necessarily ideation. I wouldn't say they trigger ideation, but they trigger innovation, or they help to drive innovation. Next slide. Yeah. So I listed 6 of them. Dissatisfaction. I have found, for me personally, that one of the key drivers for my ideation and as well innovation is when I find myself dissatisfied. So you cannot innovate if you are really satisfied. That means there is no room for improvement, right? And so if you feel a sense of dissatisfaction, it shouldn't lead you to feel depression. Rather, you should ask yourself, what can you do, right? The other interesting one is greed. A lot of innovations are driven by greed, because people just want more, right? And it's quite close to dissatisfaction, but I think they are different, right? I think dissatisfaction can be a bit altruistic. You're just unhappy with the state of things, and that's like a motivation and a driver. But greed is, you do have already, but you want more and more and more. So whilst it is often labeled a negative virtue, it might be a cause for innovation. Talent is also another cause for innovation, right? But of course, the reason I put that there is everybody might not be talented or feel talented, right? And so some people might have talent at their disposal, and that's like a cause for innovation. But if you're not talented, there are other elements of your personality. Just by sheer means of being dissatisfied, you can get yourself to be an innovator. Okay, we'll get into this in the later conversation. Another human premise for innovation are accidents, right? They were not pre-planned. Nobody thought that this was going to be the thing. By happenstance, something yeah, okay, for instance, the QWERTY keyboard that has stuck around until today, although that wasn't quite an accident, but that's like an instance where to date it has stayed as an innovation on how we see the layout of our keyboards, but it was never intended to be so it's quite accidental in that sense, right? Another valuable way in which innovations come is through observation. So, and the reason I bring this up is because I've also found that to be useful. In elementary science, we did learn that science is discovery. So you learn science through a process of discovery. And one of the key things that drives discovery is observation. A lot of us do not leverage our capacity to observe as much as we should. But I would say that I think that observation is one of the strong suits of anyone who is just first a Nigerian. For the mere fact that you're Nigerian, you are the society sort of nurtures you to be an observer, right? And if you're not a good observer, it's probably because you just like missed out on a lot of environmental things that happen around you. If we were to say observation in the local parlance or like a slang, that's where they say shine your eye, right? So when you hear shine your eye, what is actually saying to you is to observe. And just by sheer means of observing, you will see that you are next door to being able to bring about an innovation. The value of observation is that when you observe, you're able to see problems. When you're an observer, you are able to see patterns as well. And patterns are really, really critical. Because patterns will point you to trends, either trends that are leaving, they are fading away, or trends of things to come. And oftentimes the future is often based on trends, right? Again, the trends are not necessarily tools for prediction, because that's like what you do within forecasting, right? And I'm not talking about forecasting in this case. I'm talking about our capacity to prepare for what is to come. And so the trends give you a better sense of the direction in which your context or your environment seems to be moving in, and then you can take advantage of it. I wouldn't go into, much into this, but politics is also a key factor. And when I say politics here, I'm not talking about APC and PDP. I'm referring to the fact that everything in life is often entirely always political, right? Everything in life is political. And by politics here, or being political here, it is at the very basic definition, the tendency for people to influence things in their favor, right? And so if you find 100 innovations out there, maybe not all of them might succeed. And the ones that did not succeed are often not always unsuccessful on the basis of not being great innovations. Sometimes it's just who is backing it, or who likes it, or who in whose interest does this innovation serve, and that becomes the deciding factor. So be aware of the politics, be aware of the influencers that are in your environment, be aware of the power brokers, so that you're not innovating against the grains. Innovate in the direction of travel of the politics of your environment or the context in which you're working in. All right, next slide. Good. How do you build technology innovations and ideas? How do you build them? Okay, time will not permit me, but I'll try and cover this in a bit more detail than just the text there. So the first thing to flag is what is called design thinking. Design thinking is when Sam was introducing me, he said he's a designer, and that means that I apply design thinking or I practice human-centered design. And so what design thinking does is that it's a non-linear iterative process for understanding users or challenging your assumptions or defining problems and creating innovative solutions and prototypes and also testing them, right? So the design thinking process basically starts with empathizing. So you empathize, you define, and what design thinking is trying to get you to do is to take an iterative process. Can we mute somebody? Ibrahim again. Ibrahim, could you mute yourself? Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, so as I was saying, I said the design thinking process is kind of laid out in these stages, right? You start with empathy. Empathy is often like you are doing a bit of research to better understand a specific problem. You're learning more about a problem, but not just the problem, the users that are in that context that you're hoping that your innovation will serve. You want to know who they are. So that's kind of why design thinking says it's a way of understanding your users, right? That's what one thing that design thinking does. Now, the next thing that it does is that it focuses on defining, and that definition there is to define the problem. I once told a group of people that the hardest thing to define is a problem. The hardest thing to define is a problem. It is not it is not your it's not photosynthesis, right? Even though you might struggle with the definition of that word. It is not to remember now I'm like running dry of like big words to say, right? Yeah, so no matter the big word that you think you know right now, or you don't know and you think, oh, I don't know the definition of that word, or I don't know what blockchain is or machine learning is, right? All of these might be hard definitions to you currently, but I promise you that the hardest thing to define is a problem. And so the design thinking process takes you from empathy to definition, and that definition there speaks to defining the problem. And then once you've been able to define a problem, you want to start to ideate. You want to start to ideate. So now I know what the problem is. Let me ideate. And that's a bit of an expansive process. So now you're throwing out all ideas. You're not saying this is the one idea that will work. You're throwing out all possible ideas that you can think about that might work. Having ideated, you want to start prototyping. That means you are creating low fidelity options of your ideas. Now, don't go from ideation to market, which is something that a lot of us do. We have an idea and we jump several stages and say, oh, we're going to market. We're going to invest money. We're going to borrow money. You're not ready yet. You need to be able to prototype. And by prototype, it means creating low fidelity options of your idea. So if your innovation is an app that does X, right? The design thinking process suggests to you that you can actually first you can actually first use a piece of paper and draw out with a pen that application that you are thinking about, and then show it to a couple of people and get a feel of what they think, how they would use it, what challenges they think that specific application that is just drawn on a piece of paper is. And I think these days you can also just do wireframes, right? You can do the wireframe on your computer, so it doesn't have to be like a terrible sketch on paper with a pen. But truly, if you are at the point where all you can afford is a pen and paper and you sketch out the workflow, you are good to go. And you want to be able to do that with as many people as possible before you then go on to say, oh, I am ready to launch. Because based off of that prototype and testing process, you will continue to update what your idea is. And so this is also why you cannot keep your idea to your chest. You need to test it out with people, because if people are going to be the users of your idea, you want to test it out with people. And so that brings me to the next point here. Move quickly, but don't break stuff. Move quickly, but don't break stuff. It's good to, while I say to you that you should start with empathy and definition, and whilst those are very important stages of the process, you don't want to stay there. You want to go as quickly as you can to the point where you begin to what? Ideate, and even just not even ideation stage. So go very quickly through empathy, definition, and ideate, and get yourself as quickly as possible to where you are prototyping, testing, and iterating, right? So iteration is to improve based on the lessons you've learned, and you go back to the prototype. So you prototype, you test, and then based off of what you have tested, you iterate, and that means you review and update and go back to the prototypes again. So you make new prototypes and go back and test. Now, the reason why I say move quickly to that part of the design thinking process is because even when you are there, you still have the opportunity to continue to learn about the user, which is the empathy stage or the research stage. You still have the opportunity to continue to define the problem, and you still have the opportunity to continue to ideate. So don't spend so much time defining, empathizing, and which is also a trap. So some of us spend excessive amount of time just trying to perfect the idea, learn so much about the problem. That is good, but get yourself out there as quickly as possible. The next thing that I'll talk about is that you should prioritize user acquisition. Prioritize user acquisition. And I'll tell you why it's important. And I'm going to try and hasten this up. I see that time is fast spent. Now, the reason you prioritize user acquisition is that ultimately, whatever your innovation is, the true value of your innovation is in the people that use it. Who does your innovation serve? That's where the true value of your innovation is. If you, so the temptation, right? The thing that will compete for your attention, that's instead of me to acquire users, what's the alternative? Is to chase funding, right? Or obsess yourself with getting an amount of money invested into your innovation, right? Whilst money because they know you have users. And I've seen that pitfall also affect me myself. When I had an idea and I thought, oh, the funding was supposed to be what would happen in that case is that you would spend all your energy chasing the funding and the investors, and then the investors would never tell you clearly that the reason why we are not investing in you is that we don't have proof. The only proof that they need is to see that there are people who are using your innovation, right? So focus on user acquisition. And acquiring users doesn't necessarily require you to have the best form of your idea out there or your innovation. You don't need to perfect your innovation before you get people to start using it. All right, the next thing I'll talk about is assess the ecosystem. And this is important. Some of us are so bright that the ideas that you would come up with or your innovation will not be for your time. You are having ideas that are for 20 years to come, 100 years to come, 50 years from now, even 5 years from now. If your idea is too early, it becomes a bad idea. So assess your ecosystem. Where is the ecosystem currently? Do you have an idea where is the idea you have, is it an idea for which the ecosystem is not ready? Imagine if you were Flutter Wave in 2001. Like, can you imagine that? You would be a very bad idea if you were Flutter Wave in 2001. But starting 2018 or 2015, those were all great ideas. All the mobile money services and all of those ideas, they were excellent ideas because everything was ready in the ecosystem. The banks were beginning to have a good conversation with the telcos. The availability of smartphones were high. More and more Nigerians have become very comfortable with using smartphones. So it's no longer a thing to say, oh, I have a smartphone. Like, yes, you have a smartphone, and so what? People now understood the difference between application and web, right? It used to be that there was so much confusion as to what, yeah. So assess the ecosystem and be sure that it is ready to receive your idea. Now, do you discard your idea because the ecosystem is not ready for it? No. There are some ideas that when you create them, realize that you also need to build the ecosystem for it. So if the ecosystem is not already existing and you feel like you are very attached to this idea, you don't want to give it up, you can invest in building that ecosystem, right? There's this guy on Twitter currently who is I forget his name, Tunde something. He's pushing this like chess community somewhere in Lagos. That's a clear example of somebody who had an idea and he is building the ecosystem that would help that idea thrive. I mean, a lot of people do play chess, but at that level of kids in those slum communities, that is not something that does exist. So while he's innovating, he's also building the ecosystem at the same time. And so you might want to think about that when you do yours. The next thing I would say is learn fast, but act faster. Again, and I think these things are related. So don't obsess yourself with learning. Whilst learning is important, act. And the reason why action is good is that you never truly know a thing until you do it. Yes. No matter how much you think you learn, you never truly know a thing until you have done it. Practical is so important. So learn as much as you want to learn, but doing is key to innovation. Lastly, do collaborations. It is challenging, but it is an essential. The resources that are available to you as an individual will not bet great innovations. By yourself, you can't deliver impactful innovations, so you must collaborate. Yes, we live in a society where there are snitches, people betray you, loyalty is in question. All of that problems combined, you'd still have to collaborate with people, right? You do have to collaborate. Collaborations are key and they're very important. Next slide, please. All right. This is not a presentation. This is a question to this audience, and an opening for other questions. So if you feel like you want to contribute to this session, please, this is the time for you to say what you want to say. But I'm asking this question to the audience today. What are some challenges to building technology innovations that you have experienced? You can put it in the chat. I don't know what the order of business is on this call, but you can type into the chat or you can unmute yourself. But I fear that given the number of people, there might be a lot of echo and overlapping voices. So maybe putting it in the chat might be the best idea at this point. But thanks very much for listening to this short presentation, and I hope it was helpful to you.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate that. It was an awesome session, and I believe one or two things they've actually learned a lot towards this. Thank you very, very much, sir. Now, basically, if you have a question, please, it is very, very important you put it or you say it now with the few minutes we have. Because there's no how you want these kind of things to come up without having a question. A lot of us are having a challenges. That's the most funny thing regarding technology. The innovations. A lot of us have this impact of, oh, I want to build a model, I want to build a car, I want to build a this. As a computing student, I should be able to do this. There are solutions on ground that have been developed. People are using mobile app to do transaction, but they don't know with the help of a solution that has been provided by innovation that somebody has built is what we are now using today. So I don't know, a lot of us ask this idea, but I don't know, these are things computing students should know regarding that innovations. A lot of them have what they can do, but the fact is how they can implement. Or me, I'll be asking a question on behalf of them. I don't know if you can hear me clearly, sir.
I hear you clearly.
Okay, now as a computing student, there are times you find it difficult to you can imagine like, oh, instead of this to be this, I should be able to do this. What do you suggest? How do you think, what can a computing student can do to build innovations around in order to solve a specific solution? Because I can have a solution, because and I see the solution, I'm like, oh, I can do this. Within 2 or 3 weeks, they've forgotten. They feel like nobody to help them. They feel like, I don't have a friend. What can we do to build these innovations within and around as a computing student? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the presentation. I don't know if you want to answer the question now or should we continue asking? Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So let me respond to the initial question, and then you can
Okay.
add another one.
Okay, sir.
So if I understood it correctly, it is how do you ensure that when you have an idea, you are able to act on it?
Exactly, like implementing it. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot of the things that I was referring to in how to build your innovation. First things first. Remember what I said about ideas being a dime a dozen, right? That means you would always have a lot of ideas. In fact, there's one fact about ideation. Someone someone said ideas are like seismic waves. And if you know anything about seismic waves, when they travel across a certain geography, right? It's like this beneath the earth thing that causes earthquake, right? Earth movements, right? Now, and the point in saying that ideas are like seismic waves is that every time you have an idea, be rest assured that across the universe, maybe another 100,000 people got that idea as well. So ideas are not often as unique to you as you think that they are. That's one. Two, your idea is not necessarily a product of your own originality. We sometimes assume that a lot, and that's a very false assumption to stand on, because your ideas are often coming through your environmental influence. So you saw something, heard something, and you combined it with something that is in your subconscious to now say, oh, I have this idea. It's like you're on this call and you see this image where some guy is trying to put two light bulbs together, and you think no more about it, you go away. On this call, you've heard something that I've said, you did not meditate on it, nothing, but it's living somewhere in your subconscious, and then you go about your daily business and something entirely different happens. Sorry, another question, please.
Thank you, sir. So my question goes, sometimes you might have idea, but you now have challenge of how to go about it. Maybe you don't have the skill and you don't know who to meet, who is going to do some things for you. You understand? Like let me say you want to paint something. You know how you want your design to be. You don't have the skills to design. You don't even know where to go. You may be okay, you may know if it's a business center or if it's a graphic designer you will be, but you know that you want to paint this kind of thing. You understand? How do you go about that kind of challenge when you have idea but you don't know how to who to meet and you don't have the skills?
The first thing that I would do when I have an idea is to make sure that that idea solves a problem. So the first person you want to find, if you're quite certain that your idea is one that will reach people, if you're not sure that your idea is one that will reach people, you should really talk to other people, right? Friends and family, what do they think? I mean, this is a big community you have here. I learned that there are close to 100 people who are supposed to be in this session. So that's a very big community. If you are part of this community, you shouldn't say you don't have to talk to not calling you out, but just saying that. Then the second thing that I would say is that you need to make sure that your ideas is addressable. Then the people you want to start talking to, you ask them basically what kind of this idea, how might this idea help you to address this challenge. The other thing that you can also very quickly do is online search. Sometimes you have an idea that you think is that can be very easy. Somebody in Tanzania is already doing something like this, and they don't feel about you. They don't feel that it exists. They don't feel that it exists. Sometimes just like try this thing called whatever search engine that you use. You should try it. You might find some things that sort of suit the building blocks. And the last thing I'll say there is remember to collaborate. Collaboration is key. If you can't pay people that would help bring your idea to life, so maybe you have the thing that you think a graphics designer is required for, and collaborate with a graphics designer. The last thing I'll say is you can also scale up, right? Give your own self the skill that you need, because you can't say I can't articulate my idea properly. I'm not a graphics designer. I'm not a programmer. You cannot be all things and just say you have an idea. So if you have an idea and that requires 5 different skills, at least have one. Go and learn one of these skills, right? So that you can get your idea started.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It has been
Sorry, I have a question. Hello, good evening.
yeah, your name and study center and department.
Yeah, my name is Precious Davis from Special Study Center. Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for the section. It was quite enlightening. So my question is how to find my niche in tech world, because I realize I want to just do everything. Like I'm literally like learning every single aspect of tech, Java, UI, UX, everything, and like I want to just do everything. And sometimes I don't know, maybe it's exhausting. I don't know if it's only me that feels like, and I feel again that time is just running, that is really rushing, and I have to accomplish so much in so little space of time. And tech is not something that's actually waiting for someone. So it's like I'm trying to do this idea before it goes out of I don't know how will I say it. out of time, like with the time. I really don't know how to put the English. I don't even understand what I'm saying.
I understand.
Yeah, and also the issue with ideas, getting someone to actually invest. Like I hear people say, okay, how much you want me to invest? What's my remaining? I'm really bad with those kind of aspects of investments plans and stuff. I really don't know how to go about that. The ideas are just in my head. I don't know how to like just table it down for someone to help with.
Okay. Yeah, that's a it's a very good question, right? I would say that, and it's also one that is difficult to respond to. I'm going to give it a shot. Two things. One is that some of us are always going to be generalists, right? The word generalist. That means you're not dedicated to one type of idea. Oh, sorry, one type of area of expertise, not idea. You're not dedicated to one area of expertise. You know a little about a lot of things. That's a generalist, right? And it's your personality type. The world doesn't have the world doesn't have space yet for that type of personality, but we do exist. People who are generalists, you tend to know a little bit about everything, right? Or a lot of things. And you might have other of your friends who are like, oh, I'm just doing only Java. Oh, I'm just doing UI UX or whatever the case may be, right? That shouldn't bother you a lot. There's a place for you being a generalist. And in fact, sometimes the fact that you're a generalist is one of the key drivers in your ideation process, because you are able to see the many different sides of an idea at once, right? And so what you then need as a generalist is to work with people who are specialized, who have the domain expertise. So like, this is the only thing I do, and they come together to help you institute that which you're trying to like achieve. The other question that you then asked is like, how do you deal with the pressure of obsolescence? Like, I want to do my idea before it becomes irrelevant. I want to put it out there. Like, how do I move as quickly as possible? Simple fact: a lot of your ideas are going to go obsolete even before you get them. So you just accept that as a de facto before you even get started. But should that then discourage you? No. This is one thing that you need to realize. Ideas evolve, right? So the way you started to think about it, you shouldn't be married to it. That's why we say move quickly to the stages of prototyping, testing, and iteration, right? Because once you get to prototyping, put it out there in its MVP, minimum viable product. Don't perfect it yet. Let people use it. Let them give you feedback on how they have used it based on their feedback and experiences, even the ones that you observe. Then you can go back and rework your idea. Remember, who was selling clothing materials before they got to mobile phones, right? They tried their hands on fabric before they got to mobile phones. So your idea might not always, and also I think the other thing to also keep in mind is that they are not lost experiences. Whoever you are today is a composite of all the experiences you've had over time. So you might say, oh, I spent 6 months learning makeup. How to do makeup and other stuff. Now I'm trying to get into technology. I wasted that 6 months. I wish I didn't spend it learning how to do makeup. But maybe you have learned something about color schemes in the process of spending that 6 months doing makeup. Oh, somebody said I should go and go and attend this computer school. I mean, I'm not saying you should do all things that I'm not saying you should do, but don't always see life from the point of view where it's like I wasted time doing X. try and see it from the point of view that all of these are contributing to who I would become going forward. How do I take advantage of that? I know you asked something about niche and about investment plans, but I might not be able to get to that on this call. Let's see if there are other questions. If there are no other questions, then I'll continue to respond to this.
Yeah, please, I have a question. I have a question, please. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, good evening now. So I wanted to
Your name and your department and study center.
Oh, my name is Unyeso Arin, Lagos as its study center, information technology. Okay. So when we were talking about important drivers for innovations. You mentioned prioritizing user acquisition. That's trying to know the true value of of who your innovations will serve, right? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. You mentioned prioritizing user acquisition, trying to know the true value of who your innovations will actually serve. So you know who you are going to serve by innovating a certain thing. I have the question because years before I even thought about information technology, there was something I felt a town I grew up in needed. Okay, it's not related to innovating. This town actually needs, and if it's something that this town can want to be a part of. I kept asking, I asked a lot of persons, people around me, family, I even strangers, I even asked on platforms, and people, I was just getting negative reports. Like they were like, no, I'm talking about Abia State, the town called Aba. This is a state that is known for traders everywhere, and has major markets for everything, food, clothing, and stuff. So people were of the notion that if you're going to build a mall for things like a place like ShopRite and stuff, this is a town that does shopping in huge markets, but they import these things. So if you're going to do stuff like ShopRite, nobody would want to go there and buy things that in the supermarket kind of mix. This is but they don't do stuff like that. So, but my intuition kept telling me for that these people would love stuff like this. But I kept asking, I researched, and I asked a lot of questions, a lot of things, and all I got was people won't subscribe to this. Now I'm asking this question because lo and behold, I think it was 2 years ago, there's a mall in Abana, and if you try to go there, the queue there is.
Someone check it for me.
Oh my god,
So I want to love me, just
So what's the question?
So my question is, when you're in this kind of situation, you're doing the actual evaluation of the people that your innovation will serve, and it's looking like those people do not need this because you're getting.
tó bá tún lẹ́sí lọ́la bó ṣe máa rí ní òun wà ní látàrọ òṣùpọ̀ òfẹ́ pèsè gáàsì má èmi ò rà ó dẹ̀ mọ́ kémi ò rántí nǹkan tẹ́mi tiẹ̀ ní lọ́kàn mi mọ́ má ṣe tó máa lọ jẹun títí ní sí owó wa ọ́ ní òwò rántí.
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts flowing in my head now. Okay, this is a very, very good question, and one that is based on reality, right? And it's something that a lot of people who try to innovate encounter. Whether it's technological or non-technological, it doesn't even matter. You will always run against these things, right? A quick. Whilst this is a good question, just a bit of clarification. So when I mentioned prioritize user acquisition, I put it in comparison to funding, right? I was saying focus on acquiring users for your innovation, right? Over focusing on where I will get funding, because again, this might be answering the funding question that came earlier. Because when you get
Ṣé o ní gáàsì?
users. Funders will give you
No, no,
funding
no, as
because
in
they
nǹkan tí
now
mo ń try
know
láti
that
sọ
there is a
ọ̀tọ̀ ìgbà
business.
ìṣe mi mọ̀ pé o lè ní gáàsì.
The primary purpose of a
Lọ ṣe
business
láìsí lọ́dọ̀ wọn.
is to build
Bóyá
customers.
kó wá bó ṣe fẹ́ ṣe.
The primary purpose of a business is not to build products.
Ṣáyé yá wa ń gáàsì
The
náà.
business is
Orí
to
ó máa dá padà wá
So
láàárọ̀ la.
when you have customers,
Nígbà tí kò fẹ́ alẹ́
investors
nìkan
will
náà.
certainly give you funding. But let me
Tó
come
bá
back
yẹ
to
ń
the
gáàsì wá
question
sáyé
you
lọ
asked.
ló lè wá sáyé dá padà kan kó tó sùn.
So there is, and this
Ó
is
yẹ
not
kó
to be
rántí
critical
látàárọ̀
about
lọ
the
epo ti yọ fíìlì
process,
gáàsì yóò mọ̀
because
rìn káàkiri.
there was nothing wrong with the
Bó
way
ti sọ fún.
you went about this, asking people what they thought about
I mean
setting
like
up
this now,
a
kéèyàn tó lọ títì gan wọ́n
viable
ti
business
close
in the
wa.
environment. Um, there's a difference between asking people outrightly about if an idea would work and doing the research that is needed. So the user research. So there is user research, and then there is just like outrightly asking people. And I'm not saying what you did is wrong again. This is not a criticism, right? I would do the same thing. And that's kind of one of the things that I have encouraged on this call. If you have an idea, don't keep it to your chest. Put it out there. Ask people, right? Directly about the idea. Then there's also a place for what is called user research. Right? And now this is what user research does. If I ask you right now, if you get 3 days of holiday in your current program, like the director announces that from now till Friday, no lectures, you guys are on compulsory holiday. If I ask you now, what will you do? Everybody will tell me lofty ideas. Some people will say I will sleep. Some people will say I will read all my books and prepare for my exams. Some people will say I will travel to my village and like go and see my parents and visit them during Christmas. You tell me all those things, right? But if I meet you all again in 3 days' time and ask you what you did with your 3 days of break, the response will be different from all the things you will tell me. And so user research is a process of unpacking those hidden tendencies, those desires, those behaviors, right? And so when you want to do it, when you want to do user research, try not to be asking people what they think. Let your research questions be based on what they need. So for instance, instead of asking them, would you go to a mall and buy X? Ask them, when you go to the market, what challenges do you face? Right? What's the most difficult thing that happens? What are the behaviors that ask them about their current experiences and challenges that they face in shopping. Now, if the challenges they face in shopping is something that the mall can address, then you will know that your mall idea can work. But you cannot base it alone from just telling people, do you think a mall will work? They will just tell you from their hunch, because they also don't know themselves, and you can't necessarily blame them for that. So sort of, I don't know if you saw the difference between this and what you try to do, which is also a kind of research, which is sort of a survey. You did a survey, right? But I'm now encouraging you that you can do both a survey and a user research. All right, I'll stop there.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. Okay. So, good evening. My name is Falade Dokas Oluwakami from my Abeokuta Study Center. I'm in Computer Science Department. So, my question is, after getting your ideas, after like getting the impact, like you have identified the problems, though you are still on the way of identifying the problems, so that you have gotten to a path that yes, you know that you can be able to like divine the problem and you can give it out to people like to like you have already made the idea. You understand, Sha? So you have already like gotten the prototype and you've given it to people to like review that, like you have send people like to send their review about what the solution you have to that problem. So now my question is, after you've gotten it and you are like kind of satisfied with what you've gotten, so now to get the funding to like, launch it, and you know that that problem in this kind of Nigeria, you know that problem is going to like be very beneficial. So if you're targeting the produce